Welcome back to the show, everybody. My name is Michael Lynn. I'm a developer advocate at MongoDB, and we're live from .local, New York City, 2024. So excited to have you joining us today. Thanks to our sponsors. And I'm really delighted to welcome Steve Jones, Executive Vice President of Data-Driven Business at Capgemini. Capgemini is a global consulting technology services and digital transformation company headquartered in Paris. It operates in 50 companies and employs around 300,000 people. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, terrific. So we've just come off the keynote. There were some really exciting announcements. Did any jump out at you?
I think for me, the big thing was the GA around Atlas and streaming. Not that hasn't been there before, but the very fact that we're talking so much these days in a vector side and in terms of these next generation data sources and representations of data, that the streaming update of those is becoming normal. So for me, that's a really big part of the transition of the world from being data just as post-transactional mess to the idea of actually data as something that drives business, which can only be done if you're working at operational speed. So for me, that GA of that was a big deal.
Yeah, so you're referring to the general availability of Atlas Stream Processing. More information about that in the links below for the folks joining us on the live stream. So Capgemini, technology services, consulting, I can't imagine that you're not just inundated with requests around Gen AI applications. And
yeah, I mean, our first Gen AI project went live in 2017, which is in drug research. The team who actually did that a month and a bit ago were presenting to the Royal Society on using quantum computers. So the team, 2017, we were doing Gen AI. Our first LLM program went live in 2021, so sort of 12 months before all the hype hit. So it's something we've been doing quite a long time, of that piece of what does it take to actually get it into production? Because I think that's the thing about Gen AI is it's a phenomenal prototyping technology, but it takes different thinking to get it into production.
Yeah, so like you said, prototyping, I mean, it's so easy today. And we've got developer resources available to help folks build a RAG application in literally minutes. We've got a certification program, a training program around developing a RAG application. I think it took me about 20 minutes to get through it. And that's a breeze, developing an app that quickly. But so what are the challenges associated with taking that next step and getting something from a prototype into production?
What the gap between prototype and production has never been larger than it is with Gen AI, because Gen AI can go wrong in ways that no other application can go wrong. So although you can do a happy path piece that says this is into production by RAG and I've got all this and all of those areas, well, but what happens if somebody says they want to play chess? What happens if somebody says pawn to bishop 4? Do you get a response back? Well, the answer is if you're using one of these foundation models, yeah, you're going to get a response back.
Yeah.
Do you want as a company to be paying for somebody to phone up your call center and say, write me an essay on the problems with the 17th president of the United States? These are all things that a Gen AI application that's using the foundation model do out the box.
Yeah.
They're not part of your application, though.
Right.
And so those are sort of the silly examples. But the reality is the happy path prototype has never been easier. But to get it into production, to understand how you maintain the RAG, how you keep the RAG aligned to the transactions, how you keep the RAG aligned to the information sources, understanding how these different pieces need to be guardrails, understanding from a cost optimization perspective. Because if you're using, I'll take the Anthropic guys, for example, if you've got Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus is an incredibly powerful, incredibly expensive model. But if I can use Haiku for some things, then I completely change my cost model. So the difference is that historically, when we built an application, we've gone, hey, it works, I just need to scale it up. Actually, most of the time in Gen AI, you're actually looking at the opposite problem, which is, yes, it works, but I've now got to scale it down to my budget, which means using many more techniques like cascading and using optimization. And that's where, from a Capgemini perspective, something we built called Raise, which was an operational Gen AI accelerator. It's all about those busy pieces of work to keep your data aligned and to keep all the operational pieces that actually make it work in production.
Yeah. I've been talking a lot to developers, and this concept of a unified data architecture comes up invariably in the conventional application development space. How does that change with AI?
Well, I think that with AI, the biggest piece is this fact that most developers who build applications aren't worried about data quality. And I say that because I've been working in the data. I used to build applications. And then I got into the data and AI space, and I realized, oh my God, we've been creating absolutely appalling data out of applications, and we haven't cared about it.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I think that changes is if you want to use AI in operations, you don't need to think about data quality. You need to think about data accuracy. Does this data accurately represent the real world that I'm interacting with? Because that's the only way you can trust an AI to make a decision, is if it's making a decision based on a digital reflection of your operational reality. That's the requirement. So I think data models are data models of whatever, and that's a separate topic. But the core piece is this. If I want to rely on AI, AI is not intelligent, no matter what the I stands for. It doesn't understand. I therefore need to give it accurate information. And is my application constructed in a way to get accurate information at the right speed to my AI? Or am I doing traditional stuff, which is the BI team will clean it up? That doesn't work if I'm using AI.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't scale. But as vector stores enter the picture, there's this concept of aligning your operational data, your analytical data, your transaction stores. How are folks dealing with that today?
Well, I mean, I actually had a fantastic conversation with Andrew, your SVP of product around this just before, which is, I think what's really interesting, when you're dealing with traditional SQL databases, the way you do it is you do change data capture and you do feed updates to all of those different stores. And you can do the same, obviously, with MongoDB. There's the stream processing. I put a Kafka subscriber on it. I'll probably still do that when I'm looking at history of change, when I'm doing deep learning use cases. But with the document store, I've got another option. I can start designing my core data model and then designing the views on top of it to be aligned to those ideas. Now, does that mean I need to be transactionally consistent with a vector store? No, that's insanity. But it does mean I need to be fast consistent with my AI and then have a verification path, something we call lazy harmonization, the idea of, or lazy consistency, this idea that it doesn't matter if I'm eventually consistent as long as I'm checking. So I think one of the things as we look at this consistency thing, this use in Mongo, the ability to say, yes, I'm writing the transactions, but that document store behind, I can start putting a chunking strategy on top of RAG and say, this is the view that RAG has on my transactional store, which means my AI is a fraction of a second delayed from the transaction, but that's still as fast as a human needs it. So it still can make a recommendation within the scope of the business process, within the scope of action. That need to keep everything in sync, I think, becomes fundamental, not just worrying about, I need a fast transaction. That's almost the least important part of the problem in future.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the back end and data and aligning and unifying data. How does the user experience change in the AI world?
Well, I think we've said historically, we believe, in IT, we believe that business processes are real and they're not. Because actually, no organization has ever organized themselves around lead to cash. So if you think about actually how people make decisions, they make decisions based on the information and context around. Most applications don't support that terribly well. So if you think about the transaction as actually being in an AI world, only 5% of your problem. The majority of your problem is, do you represent your operational reality in a way that people can see it? AIs can assist them in making decisions and driving that outcome. In other words, looking at modeling reality and the interactions with reality, as opposed to just, I need to commit this transaction. I need to do X, Y, Z to finish. Those things are still going to happen, but they're a commodity in this future. That's one of the things we found with GenAI applied to coding. It's really good at doing, I need to add something to a shopping cart. Well, dude, we've done that a million times before, so I can generate that code. I need to do an adaptive recommendation with tone for this area. No. There's a lot of data structuring I need to do in order to do that. So that's the shift for us.
So we've got about a minute left. Somebody with your brain and the experience you have, in the time we have left, give us a vision of software development in the future.
Well, first thing to say is the joke on this is my father's a lecturer in computer science, retired now. And when he first started his degree, the end of coding was 3 years away. And he always taught his students that the end of coding is 3 years away. And he'd know how bad the year was going to be based on how they reacted. And that's still true, because we're not going to be asked to code in the same way. In the same way as when I started, I was doing 68,000 assembler, right? I'm that damn old. But that piece of being able to say how I build a system and code it for the future, as a software developer, I've got to start thinking about how I build systems based on operational reality, as opposed to being really good at Node.js and stuff like that. I've got to start thinking about systems theory and constructing things like that model the business as it works,
domain,
rather than technical systems that work how nobody works.
Yeah. Steve, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for joining us.
Been a pleasure, Dave.